As I mentioned earlier, the whole point of understanding composition more deeply is to turn it into an active tool that we can leverage in our day-to-day practice, and not just some theoretical talk that has no bearing in the real world. The famous theorist and teacher Johannes Eaton had a funny quote on the topic of knowledge. Eaton was the founder of the main theoretical course of the Bauhaus in the 20s called the Basic Course. The course was entirely rooted in a single topic, contrast, but I'll get back to this in Diamond 2 as it will be a great starting point for us to discuss the topic of perception. Eaton used to tell his students, if you, unknowing, are able to create masterpieces in color, then a knowledge is your way. But if you are unable to create masterpieces in color out of your own knowledge, then you ought to look for knowledge. There are several important takeaways from this little quote that I think are worth mentioning. It is true that some gifted people will be able to intuitively compose successful images, although it definitely isn't everyone, and it isn't sure science and always available on the get-go. Another important fact is that creating masterpieces indeed is a matter of knowledge, whether conscious or not. They are principles we can learn and draw from in order to create masterpieces. It's not a random act or just a question of taste. This idea of looking for knowledge also refers to an idea that is central for me, the idea of mindfulness. Meaning, if you can't create masterpieces intuitively, then you ought to actively and mindfully use your understanding of composition in order to create masterpieces. There are two drawbacks from relying on your own knowledge and intuition, though. Intuition is kind of unreliable because sometimes you will have ideas, but sometimes you won't. And if you don't know what to do when you don't have ideas, then you're kind of screwed. And this is definitely not a good thing in a business environment. And also, when it comes to communicating your ideas to your peers or your clients, if everything is so intuitive to you that you can't really explain your process, then you won't be able to weigh in the decision process in the real world of image making. This is why learning the ins and outs of composition is important. This is why only a proper methodology will help you to work at your full potential constantly. Now we have a kick-ass diagram and stronger understanding of what composition really is about and how valuable it is for basically any artist. That's all and well, but is that it? Well, yes, except no, there's a little bit more. This new understanding of composition clarifies three key phases of any creative process and lead us to valuable insight on the creative cycle altogether that I want to quickly present to you before closing this chapter. There are three key ongoing phases in the creative process, and luckily, understanding composition is helping us in all three of them. First, composition will help us to analyze. By understanding that composition is made out of four core components, intent, frame, light, and color, we become more aware of how to deconstruct any image in its core components rather than simply looking at the whole. This will help us in having a more creative look at potential references by seeing them for their creative potential rather than their mere physical potential. Also, our more acute understanding of the importance of intent will help us analyzing images on a deeper level. Questioning the intent of an image and how it's been translated into visual can be reverse engineered in order to later come up with visual ideas based on the intent we are dealing with. So instead of looking at an image on the purely technical aspect, we become more and more aware of the sort of sub-layers of meaning the image is communicating and how we can leverage them in our future work. One of the main drawbacks I noticed when consuming social media content is that the fast-paced environment doesn't give us time to stop and analyze more deeply the visuals we are fed. I strongly invite you to try to always take a slightly longer pause whenever you come across an image you like in order to understand more accurately what is going on in the image and why you think it is creating the effect it has on you. It is actually equally important to do this exercise with images you find underwhelming or straightly boring, because this will give you pointers on what to actually avoid in your own work. Overall, having a better understanding of composition will help you defaulting your mind towards active understanding rather than passive consumption of content. This will have a direct impact on your progress because all the content you'll come across will one way or another serve the foundation of your future work. Second, composition will help us to create. Already know we have a good head start by understanding the foundation of composition around the idea of intent. This will greatly clarify our creation process by giving us the appropriate filter through which we can take decisions when crafting images. Also, by having a clear idea of the interlinkages between the four core components, we can derive a stronger methodology for composition by questioning each core component and its interactions with the others throughout the creative process. Instead of composing in the dark, looking for something that looks nice by trying out random options, we are mindfully judging our own work against a clearer goal, as well as using a more accurate understanding of each core component, and we can then assess what works and what doesn't, thus reaching our best potential work in a more straightforward and predictable manner, let's say. Last but not least, composition will help us to communicate. When it comes to communication, there is, let's say, the personal and the relational aspect. On a personal aspect, I think strengthening your communication skills is paramount in sort of avoiding the frustration of not being understood by your peers or your clients when creating visuals, being able to basically sell your ideas. Having a clear understanding of how an image works internally by leveraging all the composition core components and understanding accurately how they sort of tightly work together will help you in anchoring conversations in a more unbiased realm where tastes matter less and everything comes down to a more accurate interpretation of the original intent. Steering away from the question of taste and anchoring conversation in methodology and knowledge will help you basically to lead better conversations with your clients and reach more interesting and daring creative directions for your future projects. These three key phases are actually part of a sort of virtuous retroactive cycle. This cycle is always ongoing, and any step done mindfully will lead to a better understanding of the next one, and so on and so on. What I mean by that is that every time you analyze work, your own work will get better. And every time you create more mindful work, you are able to justify it better. And every time you communicate like an expert to your client or your peers, you grow trustful business relationship. This simple virtuous cycle has the benefit of being very rewarding at each step. And importantly, decided that the more mindful you are when practicing each of those steps, the faster and broader this ongoing cycle will help you grow.